Coming right up, Straight Talk with Art Levine. Our guest tonight, Dr. Craig Smith, former presidential speechwriter and director of the Center for First Amendment Studies at CSULB, as we continue our 21st anniversary year.
Closed captioning provided by Scan Health Plan. Straight Talk is brought to you in part by Southern California Edison. For over 100 years, life powered by Edison. The Press Telegram, your local news leader for over 100 years.
Join us for tonight's edition of Straight Talk. And now your host, Art Levine.
Good evening and welcome to Straight Talk. We've got a great guest for our entire show, Dr. Craig Smith, former presidential speechwriter for President Ford and director of the Center for First Amendment Studies here at CSULB. Craig, welcome back to our show.
Good to be back.
The current issue of the Straight Talk magazine, our September-October issue, which is now out on the street, features a column by Dr. Smith on the subject of, does the vice president matter? We'll talk about that a little bit later in the interview. I think without jumping the gun, the answer is yes, it does. But we're going to talk about the conventions, which many of us were watching, and then very interestingly, we'll use our guest skills in analyzing the debate styles of the presidential and vice presidential candidates. So we start with the Republican convention. Craig, give us your take on it.
Well, I thought the first day went very well. Ann Romney did what she needed to do. She was an excellent speaker. She identified with her audience, particularly with women, who the Republicans need. And then she warmed up our feelings about Mitt Romney, talking about him personally, the man she loved, the man she met at the high school dance.
And Romney, one of his problems is he seems a bit standoffish. He looks a great-looking guy like Superman, but not warm and fuzzy.
That's right. He is distant. And her job was to say, you know, he doesn't brag about the things he does and all the good things he does for people. He just doesn't think that's appropriate. That isn't the way he was raised. So I'm going to tell you about them. And then they had other people who came on and talked about it. So her theme was love, and she was the good cop. And then she was followed by Chris Christie, who gave the keynote address, and his theme was truth, and he was the bad cop. He really beat up on the Democrats and on Barack Obama, and had some pretty good lines in there. You know, we love the teachers, not their unions, which was puts the Republicans right where they like to be. So I thought that was a pretty dynamic speech, too.
Some had criticized him for being too much about himself and his record.
I think that's a little unfair because Ann Romney had gone on so long about her husband that I think he needed to establish his own credibility, then transfer it to Mitt Romney. And I thought he did that rather effectively.
And Chris Christie was being urged to run in the presidential primaries. He declined for whatever reason, but he remains a viable candidate at the national level, does he not?
Oh, I think so. And you know, if Mitt Romney does not win this election, that's one of the first names that's going to emerge as a presidential candidate in the Republican Party for next time around.
He has a few extra pounds. Does that
yeah.
negatively impact a presidential candidate in your view?
It does in some cases. I mean, certainly Mike Huckabee felt that way and lost a lot of weight before he ran for president. And I think Chris Christie may want to think about that.
Back in the 19th century, they tended to be more rotund.
Yeah, well, if you look at William McKinley, and you know, they were called prosperous. It was a sign of your wealth and your prosperity if you were a little heavy set.
Rubens, the painter in the 17th century.
Voluptuous.
Voluptuous, but that was a sign that you weren't starving.
That's right.
And that was a sign of beauty back then.
That's right.
At least for the women. I don't know about the men.
That's right. Yeah.
And the kings, the French kings were all...
Yeah.
Well, okay, so any other comments on the
well, I think the
Republican convention?
Yeah, the second night was really interesting because you have another person that may emerge as a presidential candidate, and that was Condoleezza Rice. I thought she gave a terrific speech. She's very articulate. She's now in the poli-sci department at Stanford. The speech went extremely well, particularly when she talked about herself. There was a particularly moving passage in the speech. She says, "A little girl grows up in Jim Crow Birmingham, the segregated city of the South where her parents can't take her to a movie theater or a restaurant, but they have her absolutely convinced that even if she can't have a hamburger at the Woolworth's lunch counter, she could be President of the United States." And she becomes Secretary of State.
Great, almost poetic.
Almost poetic, and I also think it sets her up to run for governor of California in 2 years.
Really?
Yeah. I think.
You think she has political ambitions?
I think she certainly does, and she should. I think she's a bright woman, and she would be a refreshing choice. Or she could run for president in 2016 if Mitt Romney doesn't get it, or if he does get it, she could be Secretary of State again.
Wow.
So you heard it here first.
And she plays classical piano.
Yeah, absolutely.
boot.
Absolutely.
Okay, third night.
Third night, we're getting, the first night was canceled because of Hurricane Isaac. There was a lot of upstaging going on, poor Republicans. First, they were upstaged by Isaac, and then we'll get to one other. But I thought that Paul Ryan's speech was what he had to do the night before. He laid out his position, which is a very conservative fiscal policy. He's articulate, he's young, one of the youngest people to be a vice presidential
And the policy
choice.
wonk, very bright on top of this stuff.
Very easily, he handles this material as easily as Bill Clinton does. So I think that was a successful speech. And then on the final night, Marco Rubio introduced Mitt Romney with a wonderful speech, trying to appeal to Hispanic voter. Again, he seemed to me to be a kind of authentic speaker. I love the line where he talked about his father, and he said, he stood behind a bar in the back of the room all those years, so one day I could stand behind a podium in the front of the room. It was wonderful. And that, of course, then led into one of the strangest moments in the history of conventions when Clint Eastwood came out with a chair and began to talk to the chair, imagining that the President of the United States was in that chair. He said some very inappropriate things. I think kind of desecrating the office of the president was not wise, particularly at a Republican convention. And that got a lot of attention. And then Mitt Romney comes out, so upstaged again. And of course, they had no control over Clint Eastwood, which is terrible. He ran overtime by almost 7 minutes, which backed Romney's speech up, which in turn made Romney try to speak faster than he should have. And I think made a dent in the Romney acceptance speech. The first part of the Romney acceptance speech I thought was very impressive. He got personal. He did a nice turn when he said, look, if I'm asking for your vote, you need to know who you're voting for, so let me talk about myself a bit. That was all very effective and very moving. And then he went on the attack. And some of the attacks on Barack Obama seemed mean-spirited and began to dissipate that good feeling that we had for Romney. And then he went through foreign policy like in 60 seconds, and he was done. I thought the speech was upside down. I mean, I would have started with foreign policy and developed it. He's not known for foreign policy position.
His recent trip to Europe was not
an
unbridled success.
That's right. And then go into domestic issues and attack the president if you want, and end with your personal story, so you have an emotional tie with your audience.
Yes.
Richard Nixon did that at the '68 convention and never looked back. I mean, it was a terrific acceptance speech by Nixon, and that was the formula he followed. The other thing that Nixon did in '68 that Romney didn't do was to acknowledge his opponents in the primaries. Nixon did a bow to Reagan. He did a bow to Rockefeller. He said, now we're united and we're going forward.
Not a word.
Romney never mentioned Michelle Bachmann, Tim Pawlenty, any of those people. So I think he missed a big opportunity to pull everybody together behind him. So I was a little let down by the Romney acceptance speech.
Okay, fascinating stuff, and we'll be back after these messages.
Supported by Edison International. Californians are getting to be old hands at year-round energy conservation, part of our special awareness of the resources we all depend on. We're making the change to energy-efficient light bulbs, keeping warm weather thermostats set to a comfortable 78 degrees, and giving major appliances the afternoon off. Because when it comes to energy conservation, it all adds up. Life, powered by Edison.
I want to improve my career opportunities. I want to earn a higher salary at my job.
I'd like to finish what I started.
The new Bachelor of Arts in Liberal Arts degree completion program at Cal State Long Beach will help you achieve your educational goals while keeping your life in balance. Contact our customer service center at 1-800-963-2250 for more information, or visit us on the web. Let CSULB help you finish what you started.
In today's world, everything's connected. From the workplaces that support us, to the homes that welcome us, to the trees and wildlife habitats that remind us how important our environment is. When a bird lands on a branch, and in the midst of a busy day, we stop to watch, it makes us realize we're all in the same boat. The Port of Long Beach welcomes this world with open arms, an environmental policy that's second to none, and a commitment to shaping a vibrant community. The Port of Long Beach, thinking outside the docks.
As your business searches for smart ways to save, don't forget about the one that's right in front of you. Switch to the Charter Business Bundle and you can save big without sacrificing a thing. Get reliable business telephone and high-speed internet with local support and great features. Power your business with great savings starting today. It's easy to pay less and get more. Call now and make a switch to the Charter Business Bundle.